The average gardener throws away 30% of their plants every season, spending $200 replacing tomatoes that wilted, basil that browned, and peppers that never recovered. But Japanese farmers operating small plots for centuries have a 0% plant loss rate using 5 observation techniques that cost nothing, require no products, and can revive a plant Western gardeners would compost within 7 days. This might shock you, but most dying plants aren't dying at all. They're screaming a specific diagnosis you can't hear because you're gardening backwards. Here's the revival system commercial nurseries won't teach you, and why you'll never throw away another plant again. Here's what most people miss when they see a struggling plant. You're looking at yellow leaves or wilting stems and treating them as problems to solve with products. Meanwhile, Japanese farmers see those same symptoms as signals pointing to one specific root cause that can be fixed with observation and adjustment, not purchasing. The difference isn't knowledge, it's philosophy. Western gardening operates like emergency medicine. You react to symptoms fast, apply treatments, hope for recovery. Japanese farming operates like preventive medicine. You observe daily, read signals early, intervene precisely at the root cause before the plant reaches crisis. Think about it. You see a tomato with yellow lower leaves and drooping stems at noon. Your instinct says nitrogen deficiency or underwatering, so you fertilize and increase watering frequency. 3 days later, the plant is worse. Leaves are more yellow, stems are softer, and now you're searching online for blight symptoms. Meanwhile, that same tomato in a Japanese farmer's garden would have been diagnosed in 60 seconds through a soil hand test. The plant wasn't nitrogen-starved or thirsty. It was drowning in compacted soil with zero aeration, and your extra watering just made the suffocation worse. But here's the reality. You've been trained by garden centers to treat every symptom as a product opportunity. Yellowing means buy fertilizer. Wilting means buy water crystals. Pests mean buy spray. The system profits when you don't diagnose because misdiagnosis creates dependency. You buy solutions to problems your design created, then buy more when those solutions fail. Japanese farmers reject this entirely. They ask one question when a plant struggles. What relationship failed? Soil and roots, water and drainage, light and temperature, and they fix that relationship through observation-based adjustment, which costs nothing and works permanently. This is the observation-first framework that creates 0% plant loss. You spend 70% of your time reading what the plant shows you and 30% making one precise adjustment to fix the underlying cause. Not symptoms, cause. Yellow leaves starting at the bottom and spreading up with soft stems. And surface wetness means overwatering and anaerobic soil, not nitrogen loss. Yellow leaves starting at the top with crispy edges and bone-dry soil 3 inches down means underwatering or root damage. Yellow leaves with purple veins and slow growth means phosphorus lockout from cold temperatures. Now let's talk about the actual physical techniques they use to revive plants. Western gardeners would compost. When you see a wilted plant, your first move is a soil hand test, which takes 15 seconds. Dig your finger 3 inches into the soil near the plant base. If it's wet and muddy and smells sour, you're overwatering and the soil has gone anaerobic, meaning roots are suffocating. If it's bone dry and dusty and pulls away from container edges, you're underwatering or the soil has become hydrophobic. If it's moist but dense and sticky when squeezed, you have compaction blocking air and water movement. For overwatered anaerobic soil, you need aeration and a watering pause. Take a chopstick and poke 20 holes 4 inches deep around the plant, angling away from the stem. These holes break compaction, allow oxygen into the root zone, and create drainage channels. Then stop watering entirely for 5 to 7 days. The soil dries from the top down, roots access oxygen again, and you'll see the plant firm up within 48 hours as turgor pressure returns. This is recovery triggered by fixing the relationship between roots and air. For underwatered or hydrophobic soil, you need deep saturation. Fill a basin with water, submerge the entire pot for 15 minutes until bubbles stop rising. Then remove and drain completely. This forces water into every soil pocket and re-wets hydrophobic matter that was shedding moisture. Japanese farmers use this bottom watering method as both revival and prevention, deep watering once weekly instead of shallow watering daily, which trains roots to dive deep and builds drought resilience. Here's where it gets interesting. The third technique addresses light and temperature, which most gardeners ignore when diagnosing wilted plants, even though these drive water demand and stress response. A plant wilting at noon in full sun isn't necessarily thirsty. It's thermoregulating by closing stomata and reducing water loss. You see the droop, panic water, and create overwatering. Japanese farmers distinguish drought stress from heat stress by checking plants at dawn. If leaves are firm in the morning but wilt by midday in summer heat, the plant needs shade during peak sun hours, not more water. The fix for heat stress is microclimate adjustment. You move containers to east-facing locations where they receive morning sun and afternoon shade, or you install shade cloth blocking 40 to 50% of midday light. This drops leaf temperature by 15 to 20 degrees during peak stress hours, reduces water demand by half, and eliminates the wilt water over water cycle. Within 3 days of adding shade, you'll see plants maintain turgor through afternoon heat. Within a week, they resume growth that had stalled from temperature stress. This brings us to the fourth technique, companion planting as living first aid for struggling plants. When a plant shows stress from nutrient depletion or soil degradation, you stabilize it by planting nitrogen-fixing companions around its base. Red clover or white clover planted as living mulch around a stressed tomato will begin fixing atmospheric nitrogen within 10 days and releasing it into soil through root exudates. This provides slow-release nitrogen that doesn't burn roots, supports beneficial soil organisms, and covers soil to retain moisture while moderating temperature. The timeline is precise. You plant clover seed in a 6-inch ring around your struggling plant. Within 7 days, germination. Within 14 days, visible nitrogen fixation through root nodule formation. Within 3 weeks, the companion begins releasing nitrogen into surrounding soil. Within 4 weeks, your struggling plant shows new growth and darker green leaves. You didn't buy fertilizer. You designed a relationship between two plants where one provides what the other needs. But here's the reality that most Western gardeners miss. Japanese farmers don't plant companions as rescue tools. They design polycultures from the start, where every plant serves multiple functions. You're planting tomatoes alone in a bed, forcing them to compete with weeds, while providing zero support when stress hits. They're planting tomatoes with basil for pest deterrence, nitrogen-fixing beans for fertility, and low-growing lettuce for living mulch that keeps soil cool. If the tomato shows stress, 3 companions are already in place. The system was designed to prevent crisis through relationships. The fifth technique is strategic pruning during recovery, which Western gardeners fear will stress the plant further, but Japanese farmers use to redirect energy from struggling foliage to root repair. When a plant is stressed from overwatering, compaction, or heat, it's supporting more foliage than its compromised root system can sustain. You're watching leaves yellow, the plant diverts energy trying to save them. Roots decline further. Japanese farmers break this cycle by removing the lowest 30% of foliage immediately when they diagnose root stress. The bottom third of leaves are the oldest, least productive, and closest to soil where fungal spores concentrate. Removing them reduces water and nutrient demand by 20 to 30% instantly, improves airflow, which reduces disease pressure, and triggers hormonal responses redirecting growth energy from shoots to root repair. Within 48 hours of pruning, you can see new white root tips emerging as the plant responds to reduced canopy demand and increased resource availability for root growth. The technique compounds with previous methods. You prune, you aerate, you skip watering. Within 1 week, new root growth. Within 2 weeks, new shoots. Within 3 weeks, flowering resumes. Think about it. These 5 techniques are the same techniques Japanese farmers use to prevent plant stress in the first place. They design beds with permanent pathways so soil never compacts. They water deeply once weekly, training roots to dive. They plant polycultures where crops shade companions and nitrogen fixers feed heavy feeders. They prune routinely before problems develop. The garden is designed as a self-regulating system where plants support each other, and stress is buffered by diversity. Here's what this means in practice. Instead of spending $200 annually replacing plants you thought were dying, you spend $0 and revive every struggling plant using observation. Instead of rescue attempts with fertilizers that worsen problems by treating symptoms while root causes continue, you diagnose the actual failure and fix it with physical changes that work permanently. Instead of plants that limp along producing minimal yields, you have plants that recover from stress and often produce more heavily afterward because stress triggers reproductive urgency. The transformation follows a precise timeline. Day 1, you assess a wilting tomato using the soil hand test. 3 inches down, soil is saturated and smells sour. Diagnosis is overwatering with anaerobic conditions. You aerate with 20 chopstick holes 4 inches deep. You prune the bottom third of yellowing foliage. You stop watering. Day 3, soil is moist, but no longer saturated. Surface has dried. Leaves are firmer at dawn. Day 7, soil is barely moist 3 inches down. You bottom water for 15 minutes, drain, add straw mulch. You plant white clover as living companions. New growth emerges from pruning cuts. Day 14, new flower clusters form and clover germination completes. The tomato has recovered completely. But here's the reality that transforms how you garden forever. That wilted tomato, once revived, often produces more fruit than a tomato that never experienced stress because stress triggered hormonal changes prioritizing reproduction. Your intervention provided resources to support that reproductive urgency without the plant dying. The result is heavier fruiting, earlier maturity, and more concentrated flavor because stress reduces water content while concentrating sugars and acids. Now, assess your struggling plants today using the soil hand test. Dig 3 inches down. Is it saturated and sour smelling? Aerate with chopsticks and stop watering for 5 to 7 days. Is it bone dry and hydrophobic? Bottom water for 15 minutes and drain. Is it moist but dense? You have compaction. Aerate and top dress with compost. Check light exposure. Is your plant in full sun for 8+ hours in summer? Add shade cloth. Is it in shade for more than 6 hours? Move to brighter locations. Pick one technique and apply it in the next 60 minutes. Not all 5. 1. Because observation-based gardening is a skill you build through practice. You start with the soil hand test. You master that diagnostic over the next month. Then you add light assessment. Then companion integration, then pruning. You build your observation library one technique at a time, and within 1 season, you'll diagnose struggling plants faster than you can search symptoms online. Within 3 months, people will ask why your plants look healthier even though you're watering less and buying nothing. Within 6 months, you'll have 0 plant loss, while neighbors replace tomatoes mid-season. Within 1 year, you'll see a struggling plant and feel confidence instead of panic, because you know exactly how to read what it's showing you and which relationship to repair. You'll never throw away another plant again, not because you're optimistic, because you've built observation skills that turn dying plants into diagnosis opportunities and revival exercises into system improvements that compound season after season,